He died, just as the 9th man did. It was as if all the air had suddenly been sucked out of the room. Junpei felt his heartbeat quicken, and he realized he was having trouble breathing. He could feel cold sweat beading on his forehead and neck. June, Santa, and Lotus looked the way he felt. All three were frozen in place, their faces white. Oh my god, that's not true, is it? We should make sure. Yeah, you're right, we should. They nodded to one another and headed for the number 3 door. Wait! Not that way! They stopped short and turned to look at 7. He was pointing at the door with no number. I stuck a screwdriver in there to keep the door from closing all the way. It's not locked, so you can go that way. He likes doing that, doesn't he? He likes breaking doors. You, good sir, are my friend. Where is he? The shower room, on the left side of the hallway. I put a broom in there too, to keep the door open. We can get in without going for the numbered door, right? Yeah, that's right. The new destination clear, Junpei and his companions headed for the door with no number. Once in the hallway, it was easy to spot the metal door on the left wall. It hadn't been open when they'd been through before. But now, just as 7 had said, there was a broom stuck between the door frame, keeping it open. They looked at it for a moment, and then stepped inside. It smells horrible. Lotus wrinkled her nose and covered her mouth in disgust. Even Santa pinched his nose shut. Yeah, this is pretty awful. I feel like I'm gonna puke. Well, how do you think Clover felt? Jesus, man, that's her brother, and she... Oh. It was just as bad as they'd said. Perhaps worse. The hideous smell filled the air, so thick they could almost taste it. It was sour. It smelled of fish, feces, and burnt meat. Feces. It worked its way down Junpei's nose, and down his throat, to pound against the entrance to his stomach. He put his hand over his mouth, and struggled to keep what little was in there, his stomach, where it belonged. LLR. The fuck? They didn't have to wonder where the body was. There was blood everywhere. A few arms of the spatter reaching towards them as they walked in through the door. All one had to do was follow one of the many radial arms to their source. The body itself was hidden behind a divider. June, you should stay here. But please, just do me a favour, okay? Alright? He didn't give her a chance to say no. He put his hand on her shoulder, as if to shove her to the ground like a tent pole, turned, and walked towards the end of the divider. It felt like it took an eternity for him to get there. Santa and Lotus followed, timid and nervous as a pair of children. Eventually, they reached the divider. They looked at one another and nodded slowly. Junpei put his hands on the divider and peered around the corner. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. He felt his heart collapse in his chest like an empty cigarette carton, and time froze. He knew in that instant that he would take the image before him to the grave. Oh God. What was left of the body sat in a sea of blood. Chunks of flesh, torn from the body, sat in the blood like tiny islands in a great red sea. A vast, ragged hole had been torn in the torso, and what remained of the intestines spilled out of it like fresh spaghetti. Smaller chunks of meat had splattered against the wall and become stuck there as they dried. Globules of yellowish fat had left trails like tiny slugs as gravity pulled them down the wall, even as they tried to it. Just like Ace said. Santa's voice was strained. Junpei suspected he was holding down some vomit of his own. Just like the ninth man. Detonator in his bracelet set off the bomb in his gut. It looked as though the explosion had been quite powerful. His legs were both bent in an odd, unnatural way. And his left arm had split open, exposing the painfully... That's not Snake! It's not Snake! Snake didn't have a left arm, he had a prosthetic! Oh, thank fuck for that, I was so fucking worried! But that... Oh shit. Oh shit, oh shit. Does that make Snake 0? Fuck! Oh man, that was probably supposed to be a big twist. And it's my fault for paying fucking attention to that little pink bitch. Oh well. His left arm had split open, exposing the painfully white bone of his umla. His bracelet lay next to him. It seemed to have hit the wall hard enough to have shattered the display, which lay on the ground in pieces. Again, covering your thingy. Half his head had simply collapsed. The blood coating almost made it look like a raw pizza dough covered in tomato sauce. His clothes, too, were covered in blood. The burgundy tie, the white shirt, the jacket with the yellow piping, and the grey slacks. They're all familiar to Junpei. No mistake about that. It's Snake. No, it's not! Lotus's voice was unnaturally deep and strained, and Junpei heard it catch in her throat. God damn it! Junpei, why don't you pay attention? You stupid fucking bitch! A squeal of tortured metal made Junpei's teeth curl. It sounded like the noise a ghost would make. No matter how many times he heard it, he never got used to it. Seriously, is it the shock factor? Is that what's stopping them from noticing? I mean, Clover should have noticed, but then I suppose they probably didn't even let her look at the body properly. And then again, she's probably like, oh no, he's dead, my brother! And not paying attention to the fact his left arm was an actual arm! Arms don't grow back! Every time, it put him on edge. It didn't help that there was a girl nearby who looked far more like a ghost than a living human should. It was Clover. She sat on the edge of the bed, her head drooping listlessly onto her chest. Her eyes were blank, stared across the room at nothing. Her breathing was slow and mechanical. Aside from the rise and fall of her chest, she didn't move. Junpei felt that even a nudge might cause her to shatter into 1,000 pieces. And her magnificent... Are they supposed to be headphones? Because they look like they're made of white cheese. And I want them. Snake was probably murdered. Snake did the murder! Tansei was killed in the same way the ninth man was. Seven lowered his voice, likely in an effort to keep Clover from hearing what he had to say. There are 4 other people in the room with Junpei and Seven. Ace, Santa, June, and Lotus. Seven looked at each one of them in turn and continued. It's pretty straightforward. Not that hard to figure out how they did it. First, the killers got Snake to authenticate on the red to open the door 3. Then they shoved him into it, alone, and waited 9 seconds for the door to shut. Once that door shut, it was over for Snake, but he didn't give up. He probably knew it wouldn't do him any good, but he probably ran to the shower, looking for the dead. Small chance, but it wasn't like he had anything to lose. Unfortunately, it didn't work. The detonator's only deactivated if everybody who authenticated when they went in uses the dead. And 81 seconds after he was shoved in, that happened. I see. So that's what you meant by killers. Oh. You need at least 3 people to open one of the numbered doors, including Snake. Wouldn't open for Snake and a single killer. Exactly. That means we're looking at multiple perps here. Junpei crossed his arms and grunted. Well, just in case. I want to make sure. Let's say you're right. When do you think Snake was killed? We all split up to look for the parts of the Reds, I think. Right after that was when we noticed he was gone. Then that means none of us have alibis. We were all off searching the rooms we'd been assigned, looking for those parts. Yeah. That means anybody could be a killer. But wait a minute. What are you talking about? June seemed shocked. How can you say one of us is a killer so casually? Well, not just one of us. If I'm right, then at least two of us are murderers. Why don't you calm down a bit, Seven? What are you going to gain by being so suspicious? That's what Zero wants, you know. What Zero wants? Exactly. This game was set up by Zero, wasn't it? Any game has a winner and a loser. Whoever makes it through door 9 is a winner, and those who don't are losers. Zero is trying to make us fight against one another for that victory. Then you're saying that Zero is trying to split us up by making us fight each other? Yes. That is why we can't let ourselves fall prey to such suspicion. We have to trust one another and form a strong bond of friendship. Otherwise, we'll end up ensnared by Zero's manipulations. Okay, Princess Celestia, let's go. Then, does it mean that the person who killed Snake? Yes, almost certainly Zero himself. If there's anyone we should doubt, it should be Zero. He masterminded this game and kidnapped all of us. Doesn't seem reasonable that he would have killed Snake as well. Junpei hadn't really considered that. If Zero had killed Snake, then Zero was on the ship with them. Was Zero still on the ship with them? Well, I haven't seen any cameras. But then again, give me nothing. It's all none of it's remotely controlled. Can I be sure or not? If I was the killer, to be perfectly honest, I'd put a saw and I'd be one of the people. Of course he was. That was obvious. Zero was somewhere on the ship, but Junpei had no idea where. Well, he called himself the captain, so probably the captain's room. Junpei mumbled to himself, lost in thought. That or it's Ace. Oh, Ace. Oh, Ace. Or it could be Seven. Or it could be Snake. My money's on Snake. Snake with his regenerating arm. Where could Zero be hiding? Suddenly, everyone went quiet. The silence was cold and clammy, and Junpei could feel it crawling across his back and around his throat. Again, he heard the ghosting, moaning noise. And moments later, a person who looked more ghost than human appeared. It was Clover. She looked at the floor as she spoke, and her voice was a cold monotone. I think Zero is one of us. Gah? I think like the pink. I don't like this. Every human body in the room froze. The only sound was the muffled rustling of breath. Eyes darted from face to face. One of those faces was the face of their jailer. But who? Junpei said, "Oh, will I believe it? I do. I really do. But like the other guy said, we can't be suspicious, so maybe I should just lie to keep her happy." Oh, moral dilemmas. That's crazy. Isn't this ship going to sink in a few hours? If Zero was here with us, he'd be putting himself in danger. Why the hell would you do something like that? There's no motive. Clover looked up at Junpei and her face fell. You Don't believe me? Well... Her eyes were so pitiful. The moment Junpei's met them, he felt his heart tighten. He didn't think what he said was wrong, but perhaps the way he'd said it had been... He felt too insensitive. Clover had just lost her brother. His death would have been bad enough, but she'd also seen that blasted wreck of his body. Junpei barely knew him, and the sight had been enough to make him sick. What Clover had felt, he couldn't begin to imagine. In the mental state she must have been in, it was understandable that she would look at those around her with suspicion. She felt everyone was against her. The least Junpei could have done was try to understand what she was feeling. He felt ashamed of what he said. Perhaps he thought I should apologise. But before that apology could begin... Clover, I understand what you're feeling. You don't feel that you can trust any of us. Ace had been beating Junpei to the punch. And he spoke to Clover. His face was calm and friendly. But you have to understand. The more we distrust one another, the further we fall into our true foe's trap. Zero was the one who did those horrible things to your brother. Do you want to let yourself be manipulated by someone who would do such a horrible thing? Clover didn't answer. She didn't even look at Ace. The whole time her eyes were on Junpei. You could feel Clover's eyes boring into him. They were the colour of a deep winter lake. Junpei saw no suspicion in them, only sadness. Then, in that horrible silence, they heard a bell begin to ring. It was the clock at the central staircase. 3 in the morning. That means we have 3 hours left. Then we need to move. Now. 7, Clover. I know how you feel. But you do understand that right now it's important we trust one another, don't you? 7 and Clover remained silent. Their eyes were looking at something somewhere else, very far away. We must go. We have very little time left. Ace's words put their feet moving. They all knew that they were going. The next destination was Mercury. That's a long fucking way! It sat bolted to the wall near the stairs that led to the casino and the kitchen, between 2 elevators. The Mercury card reader. Junpei stood in front of it with the Mercury card. 7 had given him the card. I found it when we were checking out the shower room. At least, that's what he said. Junpei slid the card through the reader. The light on the reader turned green and made a tiny electronic noise. Now they were ready. Junpei and June had been chosen as the investigators. The reasoning behind that they had been to Edict before, and no one else had. As before, Junpei sent the elevator ahead just to make sure the floor they were heading to wasn't flooded. As before, the elevator returned as dry as when it had left. Once it had been checked for water, Junpei and June stepped onto the elevator. There were only 2 floor buttons they could push. The C and bottom buttons. The rest were destroyed or did nothing when pushed. Junpei hit the bottom button. The door closed. Slowly, they began to move downward. Sometime later, Junpei and June stepped off the elevator and onto the bottom deck. They stepped off and saw that the hallway to their right ended somewhere between 20 and 25 feet from them. The hallway in front of them was a dead end. Not a regular dead end. This is a numbered door. It's the 8th one we found. There were 2 numbered doors on B deck near the central staircase. There were doors 4 and 5. And then there were 3 more numbered doors in the large hospital room. Doors 3, 7 and 8. Junpei and June had found another door on E deck, and Lotus and Santa had found the 7th on A deck. There was a 6th door on E deck, and a 1 on the door on A deck. 4, 5, 3, 7, 8, 6, 1. And now, door 2 stood in front of Junpei. There's only one thing it meant. Do you think the next door we find? Yes, I think so. The next one's gonna be door 9. Despite himself, Junpei felt excited. There was something about that excitement that frightened him as well. He did his best to put it from his mind and headed back to C deck with June. Alright, let's open these up. The pieces of paper they'd folded up lay on the ground next to Junpei's legs. There were 7 of them, all told. They were written on paper pulled from Junpei's notebook, and each one bore a code name and a door. Why had they decided to vote that way? They decided it wasn't fair to simply ask everyone at once. That would allow people to force others to go through certain doors. And that wasn't the only reason. Junpei proposed the voting system, and he had a plan. It wasn't a plan he wanted anyone catching wind of, however, so he did his best to act calm as he began to open and read the pieces of paper. The first one read, Ace requests door 1. Yes, I do. Would you like me to explain why? No, we don't have time for that. Sorry. Shut up, you old man. Let's keep going! Oh, but I wanted to explain! He opened the second one. Next is Santa. He wants door 6. Yep, that's what I wrote. Junpei continued to the 3rd, 4th and 5th pieces of paper. Clover wants 1, Lotus wants 2, and 7 also wants 2. Eh? Wait a minute. There's no way I'm going anywhere with that elephant man. No. There'd be no point in the voting if we let people change their minds. Because their choices, because of stuff like that. Yeah, I made sense in my head. But just give it up, Lotus. It's not like I want to hang out with some exhibitionist grandma. I'm not an exhibitionist. I'm wearing clothes, but you didn't deny grandma. Barely. So? Last I checked, that's not a crime. Maybe, but what about common decency? Nobody wants to have to look at a chick who looks like a half-naked raisin. I'm going to kill you. Alright, found 0. It's the prostitute. Lotus's hair flared out like the mane of an angry lion, and she roared with a voice that shook the walls. With some difficulty, Ace managed to restrain her. Junpei, read the rest. Right. Junpei tore his eyes away and looked down at the 6th piece of paper. He opened it. June wants door 6. Yes. I don't really have a reason, I just felt like it. All the papers say Junpei's had been read. He did some quick calculations in his head. People who requested door 1, Ace and Clover. This was the door on A deck, near the central staircase. People who requested door 2, 7 and Lotus. This was the door on the bottom deck. It could be reached by taking the elevator to the bottom of the ship. People who requested door 6, Santa and June. This was a door on E deck and could be reached by taking the elevator near the central staircase down. It took him less than a second to run the numbers. He opened the 7th piece of paper and spoke. Okay, this last one is mine. I want to go through... Hang on, wait, how the fuck do I get to choose? Yeah. Well, I'd have my reasons, but as people have warned me countless times, 3 of the endings to this game involve you dying without anything being explained. I did a quick playthrough and yes, I ended up dying. 2 of these doors mean that nothing is going to happen. You are not going to get a good ending. You are not going to learn who Zero is. You're not going to learn anything about the plot. We are going to go through a door and we are going to die. Just like that. No closure. Normally, I wouldn't do this. but you people are watching. And whereas I can go back and play as many times as I want, you don't have the time to do that. You don't have the time to sit around and watch me play through it a billion times until I get the right combination. So, I may have cheated. The puzzles, no. Puzzles are all me. Because, fuck doing that. There's no fun if it's just doing what someone else has told you to do. But I know where I'm supposed to go in order to get the ending that you guys want. And that door is